Hello, Michael.
Hello,
How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, welcome to all our attendees and watchers of the live stream event, as well as the video after the fact. My name is Johnny Gose, and I am the CEO of Ziverge, a consultancy formerly dedicated to Scala, and now doing a bit more than Scala. I think we recently announced our partnership with Effectful Co. to become the premier implementation and training partner for EffectTS. So I'm very, very excited, Michael Arnaldi, to have on this live stream to talk a bit about why or if should unemployed Scala developers learn TypeScript. Michael, please introduce yourself to our audience.
So thanks for having me here. It's very big pleasure chatting with you always. I'm Michael. I'm the original author of Effect, which started as a direct port of Zio into TypeScript a long time ago. I think it was almost like end of 2019 when COVID hit. And I've been a long time lover of programming languages. I've been dipping my toes in the intricacies of Scala in the past, Haskell, and I've used pretty much every single language that you can think of. And now I run a company called Effectful Tecnologies, and we build Effect as what we call production grade TypeScript, or recently rebranded as TypeScript for the AI era. I'm very excited about the partnership with Ziverge, both on a personal reason, because it's just fun to work with John and the team again after a long time. We've worked together on some training workshops in the past. I always enjoyed the collaboration, so I'm so happy that it's alive again. And for the industry, I think having a strong training and implementation partner is essential when it comes to enterprise adoption. That's pretty much my interest. Happy to go into any of the technical details
Yes,
or hot takes or anything you want to go with.
absolutely. So I think probably one thing that Scala developers will be wondering with a title like "Should Unemployed Scala Developers Learn TypeScript?" is, are you a little bit biased here? Of course, you would say yes, right, to that question, but you actually use Scala, right? You have Scala credibility. I think that many, even professional Scala developers, don't necessarily have. You've done Scala.
Yeah, I've
Talk a
I've
bit
definitely
about
done
that.
Scala. I've done Scala actually quite a lot. The funny thing is the reason I created Effect in the first place was because I was using Scala in my old startup backend, and we had all sort of troubles from plain technical challenges like the JVM overhead for idle services, uh, slow compile times, and build times, which are notoriously hard on large Scala code bases. We had troubles hiring competent engineers in the JVM space because there weren't many at the time, and we were a small startup, so we couldn't afford paying the huge
Yeah.
salaries to hire the top guys. I actually love Scala as a language. I've I've always been, again, passionate with programming languages at a theoretical level. I've even used stuff like PyTrace or theorem proving stuff. So I definitely
Yeah.
love type systems and advanced type machinery, and I always felt kind of at home within the Scala community. I remember I even gave a talk at some point at one of the Zio conferences on how could Zio look if we were to drop Scala 2 and go all in on Scala 3.
Yeah.
I think it's where I,
Great
I
talk.
first showcased how to do partial erasures of union types and intersection types for handling a single error out of a union,
Yes.
or providing a single service out of an intersection of multiple services. So I'm definitely familiar with the Scala language, and I've loved it for a long time, and I still love it to this day. Uh, if I had to answer the question straight, I think technically there's very good reasons to learn TypeScript, because it might be a weird thing to say, but it's equally powerful in many concrete cases, and it can be even more powerful than Scala in some specific circumstances. And if you use it properly, you can avoid all the weirdness that leads to type unsafety, and the reasons why people usually hate on TypeScript when coming from what we call more serious languages. So I think on a technical level, people should learn TypeScript. Uh, the community is fantastic. The language is growing insanely. There are ecosystems that can be very familiar to you. For example, Effect, if you come from a functional programming background, or if you use Zio and so on and so forth, you'll feel very at home.
Yes.
So on a technical level, I'm biased, yes, but
Yes.
objectively, I can also say, yes, you should. Uh, when it comes to should you in general, I think if you want to do it, you need to approach it with the proper mindset
Right.
and understanding the differences and respecting the language that you are learning, and probably assuming that
Not trying to
you
do
don't know,
Scala in TypeScript, right?
not
Which
trying
is
to do Scala in TypeScript, yes, but also when you see something odd, don't start from the assumption that you are right and TypeScript is wrong.
yes.
It could just be that you don't yet understand how to use the language properly.
Yeah, makes
And
sense.
that's a very important element. So to answer quickly, I think yes,
Yes.
definitely you should.
Yeah.
And it's a welcoming community, so we welcome any brilliant engineer. And in Scala, there are many brilliant engineers. So I think
Absolutely.
it's all good.
Yeah. So just to hit upon the main point here, which is unemployed Scala developers, that of course assumes there are unemployed Scala developers. Actually, when I was thinking about what we'd talk about in this live stream, I wrote that as an internal note. And then it somehow ended up as the public title for the talk. So I didn't really intend to go out with that public title. But hey, it caught some attention out there. So it worked. And of course, there are actually many unemployed Scala developers. I was looking over the stats and I saw that basically in the past 5 years, the UK has lost 95% of its Scala job postings. So that's a 95% reduction in Scala job postings. And, to name one thing, in a single year, salary has gone down by around the hourly rate for contractors has gone down by about 36%, which is quite significant. And all this stuff is just pointing to, I think, the overall decline that Scala has seen. I have a couple quotes here that you might find interesting. There's a pro Scala consultancy who did a market report in 2025, and they said in 2025, the Scala job market is a niche thing. And then an Amazon principal engineer who actually used Scala for about 10 years in production said, I would still choose Scala over any other JVM lang. I am moving towards Rust nowadays, though, precisely because there's just not jobs out there. And I know from a personal perspective, I know many people have come to me and said, where are the Scala jobs at? I'm like, sorry, I can't help you. It's bad when type level contributors are coming to me asking for jobs, right? That should never happen, but it does. And I would love to be able to give them one. But the reality is there's just not a ton of companies out there who are doing Scala anymore. And I don't know if you've seen any of that in your sphere of the world, but in my sphere of the world, all the time I see companies deciding not to go with Scala. Why do you think that is? Everyone has their opinion on why Scala is declining. What's your take on that?
Well, I think there are multiple reasons. In general, in the past year, I've seen more sort of convergence on a few languages, and that's probably due to the AI adoption curve, which is changing drastically what we can do. Uh, but even before then, like I can think of the reasons I moved out of Scala with my old company. Um, they were all like half of it was purely technical, half of it was that the market was really kind of unhealthy. So I think those are two very valid points to move out of a language. You know, in TypeScript, you have a language that was created by Microsoft. So fundamentally a dev tool company that has worked in languages for as long as I can remember.
Decades
The
and producing really solid, like business focused languages like C sharp.
the guy behind it is exactly the same guy behind C Sharp, it's Enders, with a team of exceptional engineers that took an exceptionally pragmatic approach. And basically, they wanted to unfuck JavaScript in a
Yes.
sense. And it's not something you can do in a single one-shot rewrite of everything. Maybe today it would work, but 10 plus years ago when TypeScript was created, uh, that was not a viable choice.
Yeah.
So they went on and introduced typing, in a very incremental way and so on and so forth. So progressively strengthening the rules of the type system and so on and so forth. I think they've done a fantastic job when compared to the industry care that on the other side we see in Scala, constant breaking changes, constant new features that are announced that end up in a PhD thesis that are so exciting but never really get into the stable line features that are declared as experimental that libraries rely on and they can break at any point in time and nobody's able to guarantee anything because you just can't get the
Yes.
authors of Scala to say, hey, you can actually use these. We're gonna, allow you to build on top of what we are building
Yeah.
for. And I've
TypeScript
seen
is opposite in some ways, isn't it? Like we're not going to add
it
any
is.
features.
TypeScript has a rule of not breaking previous code bases, and they have like a thing in the public repository. They only have the tests that target the language, but Microsoft has an internal test suite that they run at every change and they see if something breaks. And for example, Effect is in that test suite.
Hmm.
Um, Libraries like Zod and Next.js and whatever you want, it's popular enough to be used at industry scale, is in their test suite. So if they do something that breaks us, probably they noticed. Now,
Yes.
sometimes things slip and we have to report issues that they get fixed usually promptly. But over the past 5 years, I think I've reported something like 5 issues
Yeah.
across
Yeah.
all
That's
the changes. And the language has evolved a ton
and they're
while
committed, I
doing it.
assume, to fixing all of these issues because they maintain that stance on backward compatibility, unless presumably it's unsoundness in the compiler.
It has happened that we've reported an issue and that issue ended up delaying the release
Yeah.
because they wanted to be sure that the artifact that they were releasing actually fixed the issues. And I mean, in the past year, TypeScript was rewrote in Go. So they changed the language of the compiler while maintaining full compatibility. And the
That's
day
remarkable.
TypeScript 7 shipped, the full of effect could compile just fine using
Yeah.
the new compiler.
Was this
That's
an AI rewrite or do we know?
No, it was not.
It
It
was, yeah, by
was
hand.
well by hand and with a lot of internal tooling. They ended up choosing Golang because of the similarities to TypeScript when it comes to it's a garbage collected language, so you
Yes.
could represent stuff like the parser, the type checker in the same structure. So they had an initial script-driven refactor where
Yeah.
they ported a lot of code and then they ended up manually fixing stuff. And then there was a lot of manual work because the reason they did so was to enable parallelism in parsing, parallelism in type
Wonderful.
checking, and so
Wonderful.
on and so forth. So there was a lot of manual work into that. So I think when it comes to the reasons of Scala over TypeScript, like there's a completely different approach to focusing on industry. And
Yes.
so I think there's many reasons why a company would switch out of
Yeah.
Scala into something like TypeScript or Rust.
Yes. Right.
And in a
And actually, I
general
wanted to
sense,
talk to you a bit about that, right? Because Scala wasn't used for one thing. And it seems like what we're seeing is people moving from Scala end up either going to a sibling language like Java or Kotlin, right? Because that's just easy and you can keep using the same software, the same libraries and stuff for the most part. Or they go one of two ways. And those two ways are totally different. They're TypeScript, which I've seen a lot of Scala developers, like even Core Zio contributors. I've seen a lot of Core Zio contributors move on to TypeScript, and some of them still contribute, some of them still don't.
Kit Langton, for
Kit
example.
Langton, right? Yes, and Itamar Ravid and lots of other like old school, Zio people and Scala people, they move to TypeScript. But then I'm also seeing a lot of folks move to Rust. So it's like bifurcated, and TypeScript and Rust, they don't solve the same pains, right? They're aimed at totally different audiences. Do you have any thoughts on why that might be?
Well, I think uh, we've discussed the language reasons why to switch off
Yes.
from Scala, but I think the other element of the equation is people are removing the JVM dependency in a sense. And the JVM used to be this kind of middle layer where well-developed JVM code is very efficient, but you
Yes.
still have a virtual machine and so on and so forth. Now, of course, you can use native compilers and Graal VMs and
Yeah.
so on and so forth, but they feel like added, uh, I don't know, added stuff, and you
Yeah.
could just go native in a sense. So Scala was really this in between for when you didn't really need the native low level performance and you wanted a language that was strong enough. Like JavaScript was not really a thing for backend up until a few years ago. I remember telling you that most of the Effect people were in the backend, and you were like, why?
Yes.
Makes no sense to use
Yeah.
TypeScript on a backend.
Yeah.
Yet here we are a few years later. But the point is, the JVM was kind of this in the middle ground,
Yeah.
and the middle covered 90% of use cases.
That's right.
Progressively, this middle is getting
Yeah.
eaten by both ends
That makes
because
sense.
low-level languages are no longer like you have to do C or C++.
That's right.
You can do Rust. Then the user experience with Rust is decent.
Yes. Yeah.
And for the level you're targeting,
That's right.
quite exceptional. And on
Yeah.
the other side, a backend in Node to do an HTTP API for something that talks to a database and it's all IO bound sometimes outperforms
Oh yeah.
a JVM backend.
I
So
believe it.
the performance of this joke language now make kind of
Not
sense.
such a
So
joke anymore.
it's not such a joke anymore, but the JVM is being eaten from both ends.
Yes. Yeah.
And I
And I
think
think you saw
like
that with like Spark, right? Which written in Scala infrastructure, and lots of these other projects out there that were more in the infrastructure side of things, and then all these business apps, and the infrastructure is increasingly going either back to C++. I know Databricks has a C++ engine because they started on that before Rust was really where it is today. But a lot of these new projects that might have chosen Scala, they went to Rust. And a lot of existing Scala projects, like Twitter, for example, being rewritten from Scala to Rust because they are infrastructure. They need to be super fast. Memory allocation matters, latency matters, all this other stuff. And then a lot of the business applications, like you say before, do you really need the JVM for that? Or is that a liability?
I mean, it's again, I feel like at the purely technical level, the JVM is a great
Oh
piece of
yeah,
software.
absolutely.
It's I don't have any complaints
Brilliantly
when
made.
it's brilliant, and it can be like you can do very high performance stuff in
Yes.
the JVM, but you have to know how,
Yes.
and you really have to know how. And I know you do because
Yeah.
you've made some exceptionally performant pieces of code to run in the JVM. But
It's
I
not a
can't
skill you
get
can
that
just
by
pick
the
up in a day.
yeah, and you get
And
that by default when you jump into a native language where you
yeah.
don't have all the features. And like Rust is great, but still compile times are slow. Like it still has some of the same
So slow.
issues. It can be so slow. Can also be very fast. And with AI now, a new trend is having like monorepos of Rust where you have thousands of crates all cached in a binary cache. I've seen insane projects in Rust that actually compile fast,
Yes.
but I don't think a human would ever do that.
It's
AI can.
absurd because we joke about Rust compilation all the time in the Golem team because Golem is written in Rust. Golem's a durable agent runtime, as you know, but probably a lot of people watching this don't know. And terabytes of space consumed on disk, terabytes, and compilation times that are like half an hour or 45 minutes or whatever they are. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So even though I do like Rust, and I think it's a great choice for infrastructure, especially if you appreciate safety, not just memory safety but type safety. I do think it it has its own sort of drawbacks, and they are not easy to overcome. You should only pay for that cost when you actually need it.
And we now live in a reality where we're almost no longer coding by hand,
Yeah.
even when we do low level stuff. I've done eBPF kernel code in Rust. You can't get lower level
Yes.
than that. It's
No.
literally programming inside the kernel. The only
Yeah.
lower level than that is programming the kernel,
Yeah.
which is also done partially in Rust. So definitely it's a great language,
Yes.
and it can be as safe or unsafe as you want.
Yes.
Because to
That's
do
right.
eBPF, you have to use unsafe everywhere.
Sure.
So at that point, are you even
Yeah.
using Rust? Well,
Probably
not for
not.
the tool chain and everything else, yes. But using AI to do so, the feedback loop, the
Yes.
speed of the feedback loop
Which
becomes even
matters
more
enormously.
essential.
Yeah.
Because before, a human could rely on the LSP giving you some hints, and then you maybe ended up compiling once or twice per day
Yes.
in your local development environment. When I run AI, I compile at every change that the AI makes.
Yeah.
So if the compile time is above 30 seconds, it's too much for me to actually be productive
Yeah.
because I want completion to run at every single step. So
Yes.
with TypeScript and TS Go, the full of effect, which is quite big, is not only the core plus the whole of the ecosystem compiles in like 10 seconds.
Wow.
And from a fresh start,
Amazing.
not warmed up. If you warm it up, it's immediate. Like an
Wow.
incremental step takes milliseconds to compile.
Yes.
That as a user experience, as a developer experience, is much better. And you can run more. You can run linting. You can run type-aware
And
linting.
your
You
agent
can have
can
more safety.
go much faster and spend less time waiting, 60 seconds for a small little change to be recompiled.
Yes, and that means the agent can actually check more because
Yeah.
it's no longer prohibitive to run, 5 steps of basic type checking, then linting with type-aware rules, then
Yes.
um, AST checks for best practice usage. Like you can run multiple things because as long as your checks take 3 seconds,
Yeah.
it's fine. You can be completely in the loop.
And
And
as far as
and
I understand it, the new TypeScript compiler written in Go is much faster, right?
well, they they estimate about 10 times faster than the JavaScript version.
Yes.
In a code base as complex as Effect, I think the performance gain are even more
Wow.
because that's on a they meter on a cold start. So on a cold start, it is about 10 to 14 times faster,
Yes.
depending on the state of your CPUs and your machine, because it does such.
Yeah. Hello, Michael. Are
Can you
you
hear
there?
me?
You're back.
Yeah.
Or
I
I'm
was saying
back.
the incremental elements are even faster. So when
Yes.
I think it's 10x on the cold start, when it comes to warm,
Yeah.
mm, when it comes to normal usage, probably I would say it's 20 to 30x faster than what was before.
Yeah.
And I would love to see something like that in other languages. I don't know
Absolutely.
how to make the Rust compiler 10 times faster. For
I don't
sure,
even know if it's possible.
a rewrite in Rust is not the
Rewrite
choice.
it in TypeScript, maybe.
Rewrite it in
Or
TypeScript,
how
yeah.
about rewrite it in Zig for just maximum controversy?
Just optimizing for the controversy, yes.
Yes. All right. So we have a question from the audience before we continue. Why do people still ask leak code questions? In the past 6 months, 95% of engineers did not write a single line of code. Basically, it's a question on is our hiring process keeping up with the times, or is it stuck in another age? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm in an exceptionally lucky position. I've always had a small team of exceptional people. So
Yeah.
I'm not really, and those people come straight out of the community of Effect. So my hiring process is I usually know the people I'm gonna hire for years before
Yes.
I actually hire them, which is a very lucky position to be in. But in the general industry, people have been fear mongering around AI is gonna make developers unnecessary.
Yeah.
And in fact, the number of job openings went up.
Yeah.
So if anything, AI is creating jobs. And people like to use statistics like AI is now writing 95% of the code. And they imply that the developer is not there. I
Yes.
usually
And of course,
compare
that's
it
a lie.
to when the keyboard was introduced. 100% of code was written by a keyboard,
Yes.
no
That's
longer
exactly
by
right.
punching cards. Like you've
Yes.
changed the tool to write the code, you haven't changed the person driving the equation. And
That's right.
so I feel like I haven't been coding by hand for I think since probably August of last year. It's almost been a year by now.
Yeah.
But I don't think other people could have done what I did just by using the tool.
Right. That's right.
Other developers with the same levels of knowledge, yes, of course, but a
You
non-technical.
can't swap engineers around because if anything, AI, it's a tool, it's a multiplier on skill and knowledge. And a really good developer equipped with AI is going to be way more productive, many times more productive, who knows, 10 times, 100 times more productive than a low skill developer who doesn't really know what they're doing, but still has the same subscription to Claude
I
Code.
think you made a great point. It is a tool,
Yes.
and even a skilled developer has to learn the tool.
Yeah.
Because I was in the same, I did the same mistake in the past. Of like I opened ChatGPT when we were still
The
copying
early
code
days, yes, of copy
from one
paste
window to
AI.
another, and ask a few questions, and the AI is not there, and I dismiss the tool
Yeah.
with, yeah, it's nothing. It
And
can
it
never
was
do what
nothing
I
in
do.
those days. If you
Well, it
used it as
was
a
nothing,
as a chat. Yeah.
but then Sonnet 3.5 comes
Yeah.
out. You have Claude Code as a tool. And I open Claude Code, I ask the same questions, and I'm like, you're still very useless. I don't believe you. AI is going nowhere in coding.
Yes.
Then I force myself to spend a week doing only that.
Yeah.
Like I took a holiday.
Yep.
My holidays are usually I still work. I just
Yes.
don't have to work on stuff that the company cares about.
Sounds
And I
fun.
forced myself to do a week of just using Cloud Code with a
Yeah.
model as dumb as Sonnet 4 at that point.
Yeah.
And at the end of the week, I was like, oh fuck, I was actually very wrong.
Things are changing.
Things are changing. And a year later, I'm no longer writing code by hand, and I haven't wrote code by hand for quite a while. Now,
Yeah.
that says probably 99.999. I might have wrote a few type signature over
Yes.
the past 12 months.
Yeah.
But I think if I wrote 10 lines of code by myself, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
that says a lot, to be honest.
I think a lot of people are right there with you. My own personal conversion happened at the end of 2025. I was a straggler late by your standards. It wasn't until December, I think, that I started like saying, okay, AI is here to stay and I need to learn it. And actually, what did it for me was I did all these ZO bounties on open source. And obviously, vast majority of them by that time, by mid 2025, vast majority of them were AI, total crap, closed without comment type of PRs. But then probably around October, November last year, the quality of the PRs started skyrocketing. And started looking at these contributors and be like, you should not be able to produce this PR. That is not something you should be able to do because you don't know enough about Scala to do what you just did here. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, well, obviously, still, even in that day and age, right? October, November last year, the vast majority were still crap, but there were one or two that were really alarmingly good. And that's when I, like yourself, I'm like, I'm going to take a week and a half and I'm going to see what I can do. And so I, used up max subscriptions, just as many tokens as I wanted. I went crazy, ended up writing 20,000 lines of actually pretty good code. And I learned so much about AI. And that's when I'm like, okay, we need to train everyone at Ziverge on this because this is the next thing. And soon no one's going to be writing code by hand. And I've heard a lot of people actually, sometime at the end of last year was when they're like, they went from AI hating to this is the future. Love it or hate it. This is the future.
And you see, even a developer of the level of skill such as you, which I don't like to do rankings on developers, but I wouldn't be surprised if I put you in probably the top 10 or 20 developers in the world.
It's very kind.
Still takes a week.
Yes. Yes.
It doesn't take a day.
That's
It's
right.
a learning journey. And but I think we now live with this reality. So assuming this reality,
Yes.
we have to derive the rest of the choices. So for that reality, the Scala makes sense. And I see people saying, like even friend of ours, James Ward, we
Yes.
recently had a conversations and he's like, I'm having exceptionally good experience with AI and Scala. It's like I'm sure you have it, but
Compared to though.
compared to what you
Yeah.
don't know yet,
Yeah.
and stretch it to the limit, uh, I challenge you to burn 1 billion of tokens every day
Yes.
for a week and see if you can actually have a good experience with
Yeah.
a language such as this. I remember a recent blog post. I don't recall precisely who wrote it, but I think the Primogen did a reaction video on it, and it's a Haskell Foundation member running a company, uh, removing Haskell from their code base in favor of Python.
Yes. I saw that. Wow. Yeah.
Now, probably Python is not.
Why
I
Python?
wouldn't go there,
At least
but
TypeScript, man.
I respect every choice. They run a company. They have the right. I wouldn't make
Of
the
course.
same
Yeah.
choice, but
It's just odd that a static type guy would say, "Oh, of all the languages we're going to choose, this could be Python."
and not just a static type guy, a, a Haskell
Yes.
Foundation
Yes.
member, somebody that has invested a good part of
They
their
probably
past 10
know enough about
years,
type systems to write their own.
yes, to
Yeah.
write their own and to truly believe in in the framing that types are really important,
But their
and they end up
argument was
writing Python.
AI, right? It's like AI has changed the game. types aren't important that much. I don't think I
And
agree with him
and they
personally on that,
said,
but
and no, they didn't really said that. They said types are important, but if the price is all the pain that you have to go through to use Haskell,
yes,
then it doesn't make sense. And I
yeah,
think they took the full opposite
yeah,
approach,
right.
which is usually the human reaction. It's like, this is wrong, I'm gonna go the full opposite. Probably the middle ground is better. Uh,
Throwing the baby out with the bathwater, which is what we say in America.
yeah, but psychology is usually if you're burned out from something, you're
Yes,
gonna go to the opposite.
that's
And
right.
after a few mistakes, you're probably gonna converge into something in the middle that makes sense. But even Python is now has types. It's not a very strong type
That's right.
system.
Yes.
I've used it for training a few models. I dislike everything about it, and I
Yeah.
ended up implementing my own TypeScript solution for training models.
I saw
So
that. And speaking of like TypeScript, is it a good choice? I have some other statistics that go the other way, I think, from what we saw in Scala. Basically, 1 in 3 job postings these days either mention and require JavaScript or TypeScript skills. So 1 in 3. And then just last year, I think TypeScript became the most used language on GitHub with 2.6 million monthly contributors. So that's astounding to me that a language many people said would die. We heard that, I think, quite a lot, as TypeScript's never going to go anywhere because all these alt JSs, they die. There's been so many of them. There's dozens, who knows, hundreds, they've all died. So
yeah,
everyone was like, of course TypeScript's going to die. It didn't. And now 2025 is the top language, most used language on GitHub with 2.6 million active monthly contributors. That's just astounding to
and
me.
if you combine TypeScript and JavaScript, because some people don't realize that if you use JavaScript with an IDE like VS Code,
Yeah.
actually you're using TypeScript because all the IntelliSense and so on and so forth is still powered by TypeScript. And you're using the type definitions from out of libraries and so
Yeah.
on and so forth. So if you combined TypeScript and JavaScript as a single slot,
Yes.
they've been the top one language, I think, for the past 5 years. So
It's amazing. I think I read somewhere that 5% of JavaScript developers don't have to interact with TypeScript in any way. And the other 95% at least have TypeScript somewhere in the toolchain. So like even like types or JavaScript seems to be like slowly giving way to, and the number of job postings which are mentioning just JavaScript without TypeScript has fallen tremendously as well. So the trend line seems to be at some point in the future, TypeScript, JavaScript developer doesn't really mean anything because everyone's got both in the code base.
and I think job postings are kind of lagging a little bit as a statistical element because the reason a lot of job postings mention JavaScript
Yeah.
in the past was because they didn't want to restrict the pool of people to only those who already knew TypeScript.
Yes.
But maybe they then ended up working on TypeScript anyway. Uh,
Yes.
Sometimes in the job requirements, you sort of lower you don't really say you need to know everything that you'll be working with, otherwise you get one job application and you're cutting off actually great people who can learn
Yeah.
TypeScript in a week.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
I've
not
I've
that
done that in the
difficult.
past.
Yes.
When I was hiring for Scala, in my job postings, I would mention Haskell, I would mention Camel, I would mention other stuff that I knew there was a parallelism to what the job requirement was
Yes.
in order to get enough of a pool. So I think we should read the job postings always with in mind. They are probably a filter down
Makes sense.
uh, level. For example, many people that use Effect in their code base don't advertise it in the job descriptions yet. Some have started. Now you see some job postings that explicitly require Effect or mention Effect, but I knew companies that had the full code base in effect that were only mentioning TypeScript,
Because it's just a
Next.js.
library, right?
uh,
And as it grows, I think, and people understand, oh, it actually helps to know what you're doing, then it'll start be listing more probably.
Yeah, but they would not want to, restrict to the community of people. Effect used to
It's
be
too,
quite
yes,
niche,
yes,
and hiring Effect people 2 years ago
it's
meant probably
impossible. Yeah,
hiring out of a 200 people
yeah,
pool.
yeah,
Now we've got 28 million downloads per week. It's probably to the point where if you mention Effect, actually, you're
yes,
probably gonna get interesting people to come to you because they might
yes,
want to work on Effect because they used it in side projects and they don't use it yet at work, but they would love the opportunity to. Which I remember this was also very true in the early days of Zio. I
yes.
knew people who used Zio in their side projects that
That's
would
right.
love to use it at work,
And
but
they
they
couldn't find
couldn't.
any jobs.
But then once they found the job, they're like, I'm jumping in just because I
That's
want to
right.
use this technology.
That's right.
I feel like that's the trait of great technologies when somebody really wants to work with those.
Yes. Before we leave the topic of TypeScript sort of astounding success, I would say, in industry, do you have any theories as to why all the other alt.js languages died and TypeScript did not? In fact, it did the opposite of what they did.
I think the reason is Microsoft. Not Microsoft as a corporation imposing their own rules into the environment, but because of the strategy they picked. A lot of 2JS languages were stuff like ClojureScript,
Yes.
stuff like
Coffee script,
CoffeeScript, stuff like, but I will
even
probably
Dart,
name
right?
name to an extent. Yes, Dart, but they had their own VM inside JS. It's still compiled to JS and feeling that JS is just the output of your compilation step
Yeah.
is not a great choice.
Yeah.
And Microsoft didn't take that choice. They did at the beginning because JavaScript was lacking some pretty fundamental features such as classes. When
Yes.
TypeScript was introduced, we still had ES5, which was very, very, very bare bones. But then ES6 comes out, they implement enough of a feature set that TypeScript no longer needs to be a runtime. So TypeScript has dropped fully the idea of being a runtime. And part of the reason it was a runtime was also Angular was very popular at that point in time, project from Google. And basically Google ended up telling Microsoft, either you implement decorators or we're going to fork TypeScript.
Yeah.
And Angular was exceptionally popular. So TypeScript made the conscious decision to implement decorators. Pretty similar story goes around of why TypeScript implements JSX, which is not really
Yes.
JavaScript, was because of React's popularity and the fact that they had to support. So TypeScript went through a phase where their goal was to support as much of the JavaScript ecosystem as possible.
Yeah.
That's what made the adoption story reasonable.
Yes.
Plus, Microsoft has a lot of trust. When they build something, usually it doesn't get deprecated in a week, differently from other large corporations. For example, Google has a full list of deprecated things. So if
Yeah.
Google comes up with something new, they do good stuff, but you can't really trust that stuff to be there for the next 10 years. Microsoft usually, when they do these kind of things, they keep supporting it. Otherwise, they publish it as a research, which Microsoft does a lot of research, even in the language space. I feel like they even employed, I think, Haskell people.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I feel like Simon
Yes.
Stephen Jones was
That's right. He
was a
was there at one
Microsoft
point. Yeah.
employee,
Maybe now
was there
still
at one
is.
point.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still there, but Microsoft is a serious company when it comes to
Yes.
language development. So I feel like they had trust
Yeah,
earned from decades of working in the space,
that makes
and they had a
sense.
very good strategy for the adoption of the language. So that's the difference between that and a coffee script.
Yeah,
And I feel like the others ended up dying just because of the sheer size of the adoption of the main.
that
The-
makes sense. Squeezed out by the
they get
success of
squeezed out
TypeScript.
in some sense.
Yeah.
And that's also the reason why, for example, a lot of people have asked me, should Effect be its own language? And like, if
Yes.
it can work in TypeScript, I wouldn't make a language out of it.
Yeah.
Because how am I gonna go and make an adoption strategy around a new language when
Yes.
TypeScript goes so fast, it's so big, and
That's right.
and there's AI that doesn't really care if you're writing 2 lines of code instead of one.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I have some questions on that if we have enough time to get to that. And then we got a random question. I guess this would be for me. What happened to Adam Fraser? So Adam Fraser is basically these days. I caught up with him last year. Actually, you met him. You worked with him. He big in the Scala community. He's now actually combining his passion for finance as well as his passion for correct software by working in the smart contract space in blockchain and having a great time doing it. I think he seemed pretty excited about his work.
I asked the same question to a common friend of ours a few months ago, and he
Yes.
told me the same. I was like, I'm happy he's doing fine.
Yes. All right. So many Scala developers, if you pointed them to TypeScript, probably they would look at it and be like, try catch, madness, untyped errors, not checked exceptions of Java, nor typed errors of something like Zio. Very much ad hoc concurrency. It was designed by people who didn't really understand the full picture, I think. The promises proposal, there's just lots of drawbacks to using promises. So that's raw TypeScript. A Scala developer might say, well, it's great that TypeScript is having so much success, even in like business applications on the back end, but it's a mess. And that's, I think, where you can like maybe come in to share your perspective on some of these raw things that JavaScript exposes and are accessible through TypeScript versus maybe the approach to use a library like Effect.ts, for example, to really sort of smooth out some of those wrinkles and produce a foundation that a Scala developer could get excited about using. What are your thoughts on the rough edges of JavaScript?
I think every language should have two books written, which are the good part and the bad part.
Yeah.
And every language has the bad part.
Yes.
It's just
Scala too. It's no
how big
exception.
they are.
No one
I've
uses it
seen
anymore because we
I've
learned that, right?
seen I've seen Scala code bases where you wouldn't want to work on that
Me
code
too.
base at
Me too.
all.
Yeah.
So every language allows for mess to
Yes.
occur. TypeScript, obviously having started with the goal of adding progressive typing to JavaScript, had to deal with a lot of mess in the first place.
Yeah.
It was really a project to, as I say, unfuck JavaScript.
Yeah.
So those things are real. That said, the concurrency story of being ad hoc in the promised land, it's true, but promises were laid to JavaScript. Actually, JavaScript has understood concurrency much better than other ecosystems because they distinguished between concurrency and parallelism from
Yes.
the very beginning. So the concurrency model of JavaScript is actually quite good.
I agree with that.
The parallelism model of JavaScript is non-existent.
Yeah.
But for many use cases, especially IO-bound use cases, the parallelism comes from the runtime itself, from
That's
the
right.
scheduler. That if you're running a Kubernetes thing, you can run 5 instances and you get
That's
parallelism
right.
out of the fact that you get distribution.
That's
It's
right.
even more powerful than in-process parallelism. Then you have workers, you have, like, we're getting there to also allow for parallelism to happen. And I'm building a GPU library
Yeah.
with a with a front end in JavaScript and TypeScript. So definitely there's a lot of room to do even highly parallel stuff.
Yeah.
But the reality is, in any language, you gotta know how to stick with the good patterns.
That's right.
And same is true in TypeScript. The
Yeah.
reason I created Effect was because I didn't thought like, and I also don't think the same now, that a production code base can be made by purely using TypeScript. There's a friend of mine named Dylan Mulroy. He's an engineer at Cloudflare, used to be at Vercel. Um, used I have a quote from him that I don't want to misquote him, but I think he said, "Discipline doesn't scale," which is you cannot just take a code base and make a guideline and expect all of your team to follow the guidelines
That's right. It's
to the
the
absolute
agent's MD
perfection.
problem, but applied to humans.
Yes, agents cannot. Discipline
Yes,
doesn't scale in humans. It scales even worse in agents.
that's right.
You need something that puts you in the right track. And I feel like Effect is that solution. Because with Effect, you get type errors, same quality as Zio, slightly more verbose. You get fully typed dependency injection. You get structural concurrency, declarative concurrency. So you can do a computation of many things and say, I only want to do 5 at a time, and so on and so forth. We have open telemetry backed in natively, which is something huge if you're building production grade
Absolutely. Yeah.
systems. You want to
Essential.
see what happens inside the system, and having it natively just for agents, it's so amazing because you can tell the agent, hey, use effect.fn for every function. Period. That's the
Yes.
only thing you have to tell
Yeah.
the agent. And you have to have one linked rule that checks that this is actually used and they don't go
Wonderful.
off the rails. But doing that makes your full application observable. You have log collections, you have metrics, you have all the boring stuff and the boring primitives, queues, semaphores,
Yes.
SQL drivers, clustering and workflows. Um, Everything on top. Now there are even front-end frameworks developed in Effect. They're quite experimental, but they're getting there. So if you stay within that ecosystem, it's still TypeScript, but it's
Yes.
not going to feel like TypeScript. It's going to feel much closer to what you would have as a developer experience using Scala with Zio or
Yes.
Scala with Cats and MTL for, the tagless final for dependency injection and so on
Yeah.
and so forth, with much less machinery and much less jargon. I know
Yeah.
you've done a lot of work in Zio to remove
Yes.
the jargon. We've taken from that work, and I think I've done probably an equal amount of work after that to keep removing
That's
all of
fantastic.
the all of the jargon, so it's accessible using natural and normal language.
Wonderful.
You want to add telemetry, you say with span.
Yes.
Telemetry is
Perfect.
built out of span, so it's very intuitive. And there is a learning curve, and this used to be our adoption nightmare. It doesn't look like TypeScript, and there is an adoption curve, a learning curve to adopt. And that's the reason Effect remained niche for a long time.
Yes.
But a year ago, we had about 1 million NPM downloads. Last week, we peaked at 28 million downloads.
That's astounding.
The
28
reason,
times growth.
28 times in a year, the reason is with AI, you can learn Effect much more iteratively. You
Yeah.
don't need to learn everything at once. You can see the results when you
Yes.
start because you can tell the agent, hey, I want my application to be observable. And the agent is going to write it. Probably not in the perfect way, and you're going to refactor it.
Yes.
But turns out refactoring an application that uses a functional effect system is much easier and much less stressful than
Yes.
refactoring an application where every module is intertwined with the rest of the word and moving a promise from here to there breaks. everything. Like refactoring effect is amazing, just like refactoring zero
That's right.
is
Yeah.
amazing. I'll
It's
take
one
a
of the
zero
greatest
code base every
strengths.
day and be sure that I can
Refactor and you know it's
change.
going to work. You can just move
And
stuff around and it
if
just
it
works.
worked before, it's gonna work after.
That's right.
Now, if it worked before,
Yes.
and that's another important thing because a lot of people think it compiles, it works.
Yeah.
That's madness.
Yes.
You assess the behavior with testing.
That's right.
But once it works, you can
Yes.
keep it working fairly easy and moving stuff around.
Which is very important, I think, in an age of agents where they like to break stuff.
Yes. And they like to sloppify all your code, and then you
Yep.
have to unsloppify.
Yeah.
But sloppify and unsloppify, I'm very comfortable doing that with effect. I'm
Yeah.
not very comfortable doing that without
Yes.
effect. So that's why, in my opinion, if you come from Scala, and obviously if you've been in Scala, it means you love some of those traits. Probably the best place for you is TypeScript with effect.
Yes.
And I need to be clear because I've already seen tweets. Are we poaching Scala people? No, we couldn't care less. TypeScript
Yes.
is a healthy market. There's a lot of skilled developers out there writing TypeScript. We don't need Scala people to join. I
Yes.
just feel like it's a good
That's
end
right.
game for your
And
skills.
technically, the title of this live stream is Unemployed Scala Developers. So they're not technically Scala developers anymore.
Well, but there's still this, and I know I'm going to be controversial here. There's kind of a toxicity within the Scala ecosystem
You
that I think
noticed.
I noticed, yes, that I think you should avoid if you move to TypeScript. Like
Yes.
leave that in Scala.
Yes. That's right.
Leave that behind you.
Yeah.
You're great at technical stuff. You're a great developers. Enjoy life. Be friendly.
Yes.
Don't shit on other people's work.
Yes.
Don't pretend you are the absolute best. If
That's
you do
right.
that, you're gonna have a great time in
Yeah.
TypeScript. If you come to TypeScript bringing the whole baggage of we are the absolute best, I've seen the transition go wrong in the past many times.
Yes. Okay.
Very influential people in the Scala world joined TypeScript 2 weeks after. This is pure crap. I'm gonna rewrite everything to Scala and Scala.js. I
Yeah.
changed my stack 5 times in 6 months. My startup is gone because I've
Yes.
produced nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, like the mindset is very important in making the transition. And I apologize if I've hit a nerve within the
No.
Scala community by saying that, but
Everyone knows that. I mean, there's a few people who would take exception to that, but everyone knows Scala and drama go hand in hand and have for many,
yeah,
many
it seems like
years.
every person thinks they're right and the drama is because of other people.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think like it's
Yes.
drama usually requires two people
That's right.
fighting.
That's right. Yeah.
If one person says I don't care, usually drama is not generated.
That's right. And it seems like, TypeScript, I've not seen any drama aside from, one company deciding to clone another company's open source project. But that's like drama at the corporate level, and it doesn't really affect the average developer too much, I assume.
Plus, the two companies in question are Vercel and Cloudflare.
You shouldn't
That
have named them. Now you're making more drama.
no, I know the CTOs and CEOs of both companies, and I told them please stop fighting. But they do, and it's fun to be honest to watch to a good
Sure.
extent.
Yeah,
They're both great companies, and
they
fun
are.
enough, they both use Effect to some extent. So I love them both. I would just wish they stop fighting for no
Yes.
reasons.
Yes. So you just pitched Effect, I think, Effect TS to Scala developers as kind of like a bridge, right? This is your soft landing. This allows you to keep many of the same stuff you were doing over in the Scala world. Obviously, they're going to have to drop the drama and the Scala toxicity, and they're going to
Hopefully.
have to learn how to do things the TypeScript way rather than the Scala way. But what would you say? Have you seen any feedback from like Zio or Cats Effect developers who jumped into Cats Effect or into Effect TS, and like how hard was it? What were they struggling with the most?
Honestly, when they come with an open mind, they don't really struggle a
Yeah.
lot. The struggles I've seen is trying to impose your way into the language. And that's something I've gone through, because keep in mind,
Yes.
the first version of Effect used to be a direct port of Zio, uh, to the point where our fiber runtime looked exactly the same, and I could
Yeah,
find bugs in
that's
Zio
right. You
out
did.
of
You
my.
submitted pull requests for some of those
I
bugs.
submitted bugs in the Scala code base, having found them with the TypeScript type checker. So I was
Wow.
definitely in the journey of imposing my own Scala way
That's right.
into the language.
Yeah.
That is produces a lot of friction, and you can get out of it, because obviously I started with a blank sheet. So this was very useful to get to an initial working solution to iterate on. But if you come with this way of doing things, it's going to be harder. If you
Yeah.
come from the perspective of like, okay, this is a new language, let me learn it.
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone struggling. Plus, now with LLMs, this can happen exceptionally quickly.
That's right.
I I can make the example of Keith Langton, which amazing developer, worked in Scala for a long time, Zio contributor. I know used to be a Ziverge employee. Uh, at some point, Keith messages me and it's like, I think I want to get a job in TypeScript doing Effect.
Yes.
And I told him, I'm gonna give you a job. And
Yeah.
a few months later, the open code poaches Keith
Yes.
out of us. So I love Keith. He's in a great place, and open code is now fully rewrote with Effect. So I
That's
think
amazing.
the whole journey
I saw him
was
threatening to do that.
was valuable,
Yeah.
but I think he took probably three days before he opened the first PR in the Effect ecosystem coming from Scala.
Yeah.
So
That's
I don't
great.
know. 3
3 days.
days feels like a good
Feels like a fast
compromise.
ramp up.
Yeah, of course, again, exceptional developer to begin
Yes.
with. I wouldn't be surprised if the average might take a week or two. It
Yes.
shouldn't be like that's a guy that worked in Haskell, Scala, and pretty much any. I feel like if you've worked with more than three languages, learning the
Yes.
fourth, it's not gonna be a big deal.
Yeah.
If you only know one, learning the second might take slightly long. At
Yeah.
least that's what I've seen with myself. At the
That's
beginning, I would
exactly
take
right.
long to to jump into a new language.
After a
Now
certain number, it's just like, okay, bring it.
it's like, okay, this pattern similar to
Yep.
this,
Yeah.
this other pattern. Okay, this is different, and
Yes.
you adapt. So, but I feel like if you are in Scala, that's probably not your first language. That
That's
would
right.
be my guess.
Yeah. It
So
would be an
I
odd
think
first language.
it would be an odd first language. I know some people did it as a first language.
Yeah. That's right.
Surprising.
And
But I
then
feel like the
university.
majority of people are most likely already knowing at least two languages. So
Yes.
jumping into TypeScript from a technical standpoint, I don't feel like it would be a big undertake.
We got a great
Plus
comment.
the opportunities are
Yes.
like you
They
have
are
to
there
wait while you're
tremendously. They're not
the
there
opportunities are definitely there
for
with
Scala.
TypeScript.
Great comment. When I started using Effect, I remember that you had a confidence that you didn't have before. Like if it compiles, it works, and that helped us adopting it. No other tool did that in the TS ecosystem. And of course, I think you qualified that earlier, saying if it compiles, that doesn't mean it worked. But I think a lot of people who know what they're doing, right, and they actually inspect the code and they have a pretty good understanding of how to put it together. If they're high skill developers, they can often, not always, but they can often write a bit of code, compile it, and it actually works. And of course, they need to add tests and whatnot. But I've heard that feedback before for Effect TS and also Zio as well. Is sometimes you just have this magical experience of the compiler is helping you so much more than if you were not using it, and that gives you extra confidence to adopt it.
And I don't think it's just because of the compiler. I would use Effect even without TypeScript.
Wow.
Just
Compositionality, right?
because, yes, compositionality, orthogonality, and having a language which is closer to humans.
Yeah.
Like if I think about, the way I would describe a parallel operation or a concurrent operation is I have 100 requests. I want to do 5 at a time.
That's right.
That's how I would tell you to do it.
Yes.
If the language supports me just saying that
Yes.
and not having to go through the implementation hell of a procedural way of instructing like algorithms line by line, do this, then do that.
Yeah.
Feel like that also gives you a lot of confidence of like, okay, I know the primitives work. I compose the primitives in a way that I know makes sense.
Yes.
I can infer that the program will do what I wanted it to do. That comes with experience.
Yes.
If I compile an effect program and it compiles, it works,
Nice.
usually.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you
Yes.
do this, it's the same.
Yes.
My qualification on that comment was if you generate code through an LLM, you have no idea what you're
That's
doing and
right.
it compiles,
Yes.
you have like a
It probably won't
5%
work.
chance. It probably won't work.
AI slop. Yeah. A new question came in. It's a small question. Is there a way to not write effect? Word before any usage of effect operators, etc. Is there a way to import any operator on demand? Well, those actually look like two questions. Is there a way to not write effect? I guess would be getting at there's some anti-patterns out there. How much can you abuse effect? Can you write really horrendous effect that should not exist?
Well, you can write a once I joked that to convert your full app to use effect, you just need to convert a single line, the entry point.
I
You do
see.
effect.try promise, you wrap the full program in it, and it
Done.
runs with effect. Done.
Yep.
Of course, you can abuse effect just because you can wrap any chunk of JavaScript
Yes.
in it.
Yeah.
And the language doesn't prevent mutability. You can use
Yes.
mutability in the wrong places. So definitely you can write bad code using effect.
Yeah.
It's much easier to follow a guideline if your primitives are effect, because if you stick to the primitives and you don't, like you usually know when you're doing something that feels like abusing
Yeah.
effect, you feel it because you have to go slightly outside of the
The happy
golden
path.
path, that
Yes.
the happy path that you would usually follow. But sure, one classical mistake is, for example, if you have an operation, you just throw in it, you don't map the error is unknown, and you compose that with another operation that had a
Yes.
typed error, but a type that is both something known or something unknown is by definition unknown.
That's right.
Because if
Which
I
might be
give you,
surprising if you haven't thought about it.
yeah, but this is real in life too.
Yeah.
If I give you something that you don't see and I tell you, John, this can be something you know or something that you don't know.
Yes. It's
You
something
don't
you
know
don't
what it
know.
is. It's something you don't know.
Yes.
So all those rules make sense in
Yes.
the type system. So sure, there are wrong ways of using effect, but
Yeah.
I hope there are less wrong ways of using effect compared to not using effect in the first place.
That makes sense.
And what
And
was
a
the
lot of this
second
can be
question?
limited. The second question is there a way to import any operator on demand? I think maybe what they're getting at is there a way to like, especially for newer developers or your AI coding agent, is there a way to keep them to use a minimal subset that's going to keep them on the happy path?
Well, the minimal subset usually comes out pretty naturally. You can just import a few operators and have a linter that prohibits usage of anything else.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's the way to go about it. Effect is very tree shakeable, so you're gonna end up using having in the final bundle only what you use.
That's great.
Because that question can have two interpretation. One could be out of like bundle size concerns. If I
Yes.
import everything, everything goes there. That's not a concern if you use a proper bundler like roll down or Cursor, or just don't use yes build to bundle the final thing.
Yeah.
But as far as the learning curve goes, 90% of Effect code is probably 10 functions repeated over and over
Yeah.
again, just
Well,
like
that's
Zio.
good to hear. Yes, it's good to hear,
In
I
Zio, you
think.
had thousands of functions, but if I look at
Yes,
a code base, I'm like, okay, that's 10 functions repeated for 99% of the code
that's
base. And
correct.
some places you have a weird function that usually you can even implement without that
That's
function
correct.
existence, but then the code would not look great,
Yes.
and you implement that in a, and sometimes those are very general
Yeah.
things. So yes, I wouldn't go the route of just importing a few operators, but I would definitely start with a, like, if there's something you don't understand that the AI generated,
Yeah.
ask the AI why and ask it to simplify. There's no
Yes.
harm in a more verbose version of the code that you understand versus a complete terse implementation that you don't know what's going on.
That makes sense.
I feel like you should always stay within the boundary of, like, I understand this. And the base of effect, if you know a sync await,
Yeah,
you can write a generator with yield star instead of a
that's
weight.
right.
If the code looks the same, you understand it.
Yes,
Once you are confident, you can go beyond that and say, okay, for this pattern, I actually want to use this more terse
that's right.
operator that's a little bit obscure, but has better performance, has better ergonomics, and so on and so forth.
Makes sense. And maybe a brief commercial interruption, but here is a link to my upcoming Effect TS workshop. So obviously I'm a Scala developer and I'm now an Effect TS developer. So I'm going to try to get people over from Scala to Effect TS, at least, the people who want. But also you can go to that workshop even if you just want to learn Effect TS, even if you don't have a background in Scala. But if you have questions about how does this Scala thing map to this Effect TS thing, or how does this Scala thing map to this TypeScript thing, I'll be there to help answer those type of questions.
And I have to
Backing.
say, if there's one person that I really think is a great teacher, that's John.
I
I've been
appreciate
to
that.
some of his workshops in the past, in the early days when I was rewriting Effect, starting from Zio, porting it to TypeScript. And John was like, why don't you come at some of my workshops absolutely for free, just so you know more of
Yes.
porting this to another language and getting and stealing market shares from me, which I think was very generous. And I've learned a lot from those workshops, so I can definitely recommend
I
joining
appreciate you
the
saying that.
joining the
I love
workshops.
teaching and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's been a while for me. All right. So maybe backing up a bit and before we wrap up, I think Effect.ts is a very compelling reason for Scala developers to move to TypeScript because it gives them at least a lot of the same stuff that they love and appreciate about Scala, about doing FP in Scala with something like Zio or Cat's Effect. But also, one of the most surprising things to me learning TypeScript is that actually it has a very powerful type system. And to some extent, it's powerful in a much more practical, industry focused way than Scala's own type system. So I have a list of a couple different features that are kind of mind blowing, I think, to the typical Scala developer, just in terms of, okay, this is something we need to do. Maybe not every day, but we actually need to do it. And like codec libraries, serialization libraries, all kinds of libraries, database libraries, ORM libraries, they need to be able to do these types of things in order to offer type safety to developers or their coding agents. And TypeScript makes them almost impossibly easy. Like, for example, map types, right? Map types in TypeScript. I could not believe the first time I looked at a map type in TypeScript and I'm like, what? I don't even know how to do this in Scala. And now I can see the TypeScript version and I can understand it because I know Scala's type system. And it's so simple and it's so elegant. Why doesn't Scala have anything like this? So map types are a big one. because you can like take a record and transform it to another record type where everything is an option. Or like you could take a bunch of functions and you could turn them into sort of Java Bean style getter setters. Like there's so many mind blowing things you can do here that are so practical for building so many libraries, like the examples I mentioned. What's your take on map types or any of these other TypeScript features that are really like should surprise Scala developers in a good way?
Sometimes I say that people have asked me why not port Effect to Rust, and my default answer is the type system is not powerful enough. And then people get angry at me for saying this because they don't know the real power of TypeScript in the type system. The reality is that TypeScript is probably the most powerful type system in existence if you are fine with relaxing a little bit the safety of the type system. You don't get the HM type of soundness and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So you have to relax a few constraints to get the powers of the TypeScript type system. I agree with you completely that when you code a normal business application, the features of the language, TypeScript in this case, are much more practical to represent what you need in a day-to-day basis. And there's many. There's map types, there's conditional types, there's singleton types called literal types in TypeScript. You can do whatever you want. Fun enough, if you relax one flag within the TypeScript compiler, which is the maximum depth of an instantiation,
Yeah.
TypeScript would be a Turing complete language in the type system. To the point that Dimitri, one of
Yes.
our common friends that was contestant in the Ultimate Coder
Yeah.
reality show, managed to make Doom work
Totally
in
crazy.
plain TypeScript types.
Yes.
That's insane. Don't do that, please.
Yes.
Don't stretch the type system to that level. But this is just to let you understand there's really no limit to what you can do at the type level in TypeScript, except for a few weird things.
Yeah.
So the power is absolutely insane. And that's what I mean when I say you shouldn't come to TypeScript with the idea that Scala is the one true language and that you
Yeah.
know everything about type systems and you don't find the two features that Scala has. And your conclusion is this is bullshit. This makes no
Yes.
sense. There's a whole other set of features that you will use on a daily basis that are better in TypeScript.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying one is necessarily better than the other. I'm saying
Yes.
every language has their own plus and minuses. It just so happens that for business code, for production code, the trade-offs that TypeScript did are great in my view.
Absolutely.
And what's your favorite crazy TypeScript feature, if I have to ask?
Well, I have three of them. The map types, template literals, because I think you can do some really crazy cool things. Like, for example, you have type safe routes. And I worked a lot on that problem in a ZOHTTP. And it's really, really hard to do that. There's just so many things that I struggled for, hours or days, or in some cases, like many iterations of ZOHTTP that are not entirely figured out because I want it to be developer friendly and I want it to be type safe and I want it to be familiar. And I know how to do them in TypeScript. I'm like, why? Odersky, are you making my life so hard? You could just steal like certain things from TypeScript and make my job so much easier. And I think, map types, template literals, and also a really cool thing, flow narrowing, right? Flow typing, which Scala 3 did a little bit of, but not enough to be super interesting. But in TypeScript, like you could just, for example, check a tag in an if statement, and then in that branch, the TypeScript compiler knows, of course, it refines the type, does a refinement to know that you're in a certain branch of the alternation. And there's so many just like, practical everyday things that TypeScript bundles that make it easy to solve the types of problems that I encounter when I'm building HTTP libraries or database libraries or all these other libraries. And I don't even think Scala developers know what they're missing because we would be like, oh, well, I guess we're reaching for macros or structural types or this or that. And all of these things are heavyweight. They have tons of either drawbacks on compile time performance or runtime performance, and because of reflection, for example, with structural types. And they're painful and non-obvious, and you still can't get there, even using all this heavyweight stuff in Scala 3. There are things I can do in TypeScript that I can't do in Scala. So I'm very impressed by TypeScript's type system. And I know a lot of people like to hate on TypeScript. A lot of Scala developers like to hate on TypeScript in particular. It's like, the nasty language out there that has yet to, I think, escape the shadow of JavaScript. And everyone knows JavaScript's a mess and TypeScript is just JavaScript. So in some sense, like it's inheriting its legacy, but actually there's a lot of really fun, amazing features that are practical for business programming in a way that Scala can't compare with. I love Scala. I still do Scala. I'm going to continue doing Scala in my nights and weekends type of thing. But TypeScript, the type system of TypeScript gets me excited about building new solutions in ways I can't do in Scala, or I can only do with a lot of drawbacks and a lot of pain.
Funny enough, I remember very vividly coming to a Zio World a few years ago in Malaga and giving a comparison talk between Scala with Zio and TypeScript with Effect. And I could feel like the whole room was thinking of this as a joke. And then in the after party, we were chatting with people and they were like completely dismissing that what we were building was serious. Not explicitly, they're all very nice people. I
Yes.
even remember sharing a drink with Keith Langton, and like I could feel that the guy thought that what we were building was a joke.
You don't have monadic comprehensions, four comprehensions, man. You're not going to
No,
make
I
it.
mean, Kit was already in the mindset that we have to reduce the jargon and so on and
Yes.
so forth. But
Right.
he was like, so Scala is the best, the JVM is gonna win.
Yes.
And we were like, Kit, TypeScript is serious. And he was like, sure, if I have to build the front end, I'm probably not gonna use laminar, but maybe I will.
Yes.
5 years later, he's
I
doing
know.
TypeScript at open code and having, I think, the time of his life in
Absolutely.
an amazing company. So I can feel the same. And funny enough, the last example you made about flow types, when I jumped into Rust, so my journey was like many other languages, Scala, TypeScript, and lately I've tapping the waters in Rust.
Yeah.
One of the things that really shocked me was like, okay, I have this enum type and I have a branch. I have an if condition. Inside the if condition, I know what the type is. Then I have an else condition.
Yeah.
In the else condition, I still have the type that was in the if.
Yes.
So how can you not erase that from an enum? And then I realized there's no potential of erasing pieces out of an
Yes.
enum. And in TypeScript, we have open unions, can
That's right.
erase one slot and so on. This shocked me. I was like,
Yes.
please implement this. Please, if I handle an error, the resulting type should no longer have that error. And
That's
this
right.
used to be a problem in ZO2. I don't know if you got to solve it in some weird way. I did get to solve it in Scala 3 using unions in my proposal of what Zio could look
Yes.
like. But I thought this was always like a big thing for me. That's control flow.
Absolutely.
Like every
Yeah.
day I'm gonna write if else all over the place, or pattern matching for what it matters. And I have a branch that you should reduce and you don't.
Yes.
So this was one of my like pet peeves with
And
that.
it's like,
I don't like
okay,
this.
helping us as developers, right?
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
very practical thing you
yeah,
have every day.
yes. And TypeScript, that's what I love about it, is that it really is the type system features it adds, like map types or template literals. They're actually designed at, they're not just a PhD paper. They're actually designed at solving problems that we have. And they actually make your code a lot better, or make the libraries that you use a lot better, a lot type safer. And flow typing is just like, why hasn't that been done 10 years ago in Scala, or in any programming language in which it could benefit? It's just simple, obvious thing that makes my job a whole lot simpler. And I think Java's slowly getting this, but Java moves at the pace of a turtle. So it takes a long time to move a big language like that. But smaller languages, they should really, I think, take TypeScript's almost obsessive focus on practical industry pains and developer focus, and or sorry, developer experience, of which like compile times are a component, but lots of other things like flow typing are a component. They should take that seriously and iterate faster, because all of them could be where TypeScript is today, and they're not.
And to to introduce a new feature in TypeScript, like the bar is exceptionally high.
Yeah.
I've proposed many ideas in the past.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever got to the point of one of my ideas implemented
Yeah.
in the language, just because like the bar you have to set is like this is necessary for like 90% of the code that people write.
Wow.
If it's
Yeah.
for a 10% of use cases and you have another way of doing this, they're not going to implement the feature.
It might
So
sound overly strict, but actually that's the way you keep academic features out of the language.
I think there was like 10 different proposals over time for higher kinded types.
Yeah.
They have some pretty good use cases, even in TypeScript.
Yeah.
We cannot get them over. There's no way. Map types don't work with generic functions.
Okay. Yeah.
I have very good reasons why they should work, and I even
Yes.
told the team how they should be implemented, and they're
Yeah.
like, no, you
Yeah.
and another 5 people have asked for this.
Okay.
Unless we get hundreds, there's no way.
Yes. Uh,
And funny enough, some of the biggest innovation is coming just right now because of, again, they rewrote everything in Go.
yeah.
And there was a full ecosystem of other languages, like, for example, Vue.js, Astro.
Yes.
So other ecosystems that adopted TypeScript and were relying on the compiler API.
That's right.
And there was a full infrastructure called Volar that allowed you to basically create your own language that compiled to TypeScript, use the TypeScript compiler for type checking and
Yeah.
everything, report errors back, have the LSP integrated. That thing becomes impossible if, because Golang, you cannot extend
That's right.
Golang and you cannot embed Golang. So they are now, there's a PR open, which it's called content mappers, where they allow arbitrary files to be mapped to a TypeScript file and the language embeds them. So if that goes through, TypeScript is going to become effectively a meta language server.
Wow.
This is the first real like innovation to the level of, hey, we're going to implement JSX, or hey, we're going
Yes.
to implement decorators. JSX could have been implemented if this feature was part of the language
That's
outside
interesting.
of the TypeScript core. And it's being done now out of necessity because they took a different road. And by the way, just to let you understand how much Microsoft cares, they are going to keep TypeScript 6 feature complete and in line with TypeScript 7 up until the point where all of the use cases are covered in the new
Wow.
compiler.
I
Not to
love it.
break the other ecosystems, because they could have said, okay, TypeScript is now in Go.
Yes.
Volar and Vue has to find their own solution. No,
Yes.
they're going the miles trying to implement the features necessary for the Vue team, the Astro team to keep their ecosystem working, and by making it better, because the content mappers don't need to be in JavaScript. They could
Yes.
be in Golang, they could be in everything. So they're gonna make it faster, they're gonna make it safer, and that's amazing work. But this is the bar that it takes to get
That's a
something
good
in
thing.
TypeScript.
It's a
But
good
that's
thing.
also like they are going very deep to be sure that when the bar is there, they're gonna make everything possible in their
Wow.
own powers to allow you to do what you want, which I've never seen another language do
Yeah,
this with
Scala
this level
did
of
not do
care.
that from 2 to 3. It's like, I'll give you one example. They had this annotation macro in Scala 2 where you can add declarations into a companion object. So you can like generate lenses and optics and like all kinds of, database stuff. And it was fairly widely used, and Scala 3 was introduced, and there's no equivalent. And that blocked and still blocks actually to this day many Scala code bases because there's no way to get that. There's actually no way to get that. And recently, with a combination of a few other features, you can sort of hack that in various ways that have their own set of drawbacks. But to date, there's no direct analog of.
But Scala 3 is what, 5 years old?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Like
right.
it's no longer the new kid on the block. I
No,
remember Scala 3 is this new thing. Now
yeah,
it's been there for a few years.
yeah.
I tried it the other day and still I couldn't get metal to work.
Metals doesn't work. It
I,
does
I
not
don't
work.
even know why I was trying Scala again, but like my first experience was, no, I remember why I killed you.
Yes, the tooling is bad in legendary ways, I would say. Uh, in that respect, cargo has been like a breath of fresh air, just because it's so good, it's so fast, it's well documented,
A
great
lot
error
of people
messages.
wanted to move out of TypeScript into Rust just because of Cargo.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, but I think JavaScript tooling is so significantly better than Scala tooling.
Yes, but the people in TypeScript like to complain.
Yeah, sure.
To me,
Everyone
that I
likes to
come from,
complain.
for me, that I come from other languages, like even with the old TypeScript compiler, when people told me this is slow to build, I was
Yes.
like, you have no idea what slow is.
Yes.
Slow is different. So to
Yes.
me, like the bar of developer tooling that I need is
Yes.
much less. TypeScript people are way more picky than I am when it comes to this
Yes.
has to
They've
work,
been
this
living it.
needs to be perfect. They've been
Yeah.
spoiled.
Yes, they have
So
been. Yeah.
for tooling and everything else, I think you're gonna have the time of your life jumping from Scala into
Absolutely.
TypeScript.
I agree with that. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to answer the question, should unemployed Scala developers learn TypeScript? I think we've answered probably, right? Would you say? Probably.
I think the answer is yes, and we could have closed the meeting after 2 minutes saying yes, but it's fun to,
It is. It's fun to talk about these topics. Thanks
it
for
is.
sharing your experience and perspective. Obviously, folks can check out your company, Effectful, and then the main Effect.ts website is effect.website, right?
Pretty easy
So,
to remember. The website of Effect is effect.website.
yes, right. And then there's a great Discord. I'm on that Discord. Lots of stuff happening there. People talking about Effect.ts and events and news on social media, library updates, and all kinds of things. That's a great place to hang out. You're on Twitter at Effect.ts underscore. You should see if you could get the non underscore version in Elon Musk's
Getting
new
handles
paradise.
on look, my hope is X is adopting Effect in some shapes or
Oh, yeah.
form.
Are they really?
Yeah, yeah, of course. The
Whoa.
the the new streaming platform of X is built end to end with Effect by
Amazing.
Zach Waronek.
Wow.
And my hope is that it ripples through the code base enough for
Yes.
Elon to notice. And then I'm
And he'll
like,
give
can I
you
get
that
the
handle.
handle? Please, I want the handle. Just the handle. No,
Yes.
I also want a few GPUs.
Yes,
but
sure.
that's another topic.
Some free tokens from Grok. They
No,
have.
I want the GPUs. I don't care about the tokens.
Okay. Yes. And then obviously, just for those of you who were excited enough today to want to learn Effect.ts, that's where that URL comes
You go
into.
there.
Yes, go there, sign up. I'll see you in early September as I lead a 2-day workshop that's designed to teach you and your coding agent how to learn and code with Effect. All right, that's all I have. Thank you so much, Michael. Until the next time.
Until next time, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Take care.